Thanks everybody for being here. Really exciting panel today, talking about local climate action and local government. I'm Anthony Lavenda. I direct the Center for Climate Action and Sustainability here at Evergreen. I'm also a faculty member and I teach classes on climate policy and action, as well as run internship programs. And it's really nice to see you all here. Thank you for being here. I'm just going to start with a land acknowledgement that Evergreen has created in partnership with Squaxin and Puyallup tribes. So we gratefully acknowledge and honor the Squaxin Island tribe, upon whose traditional homelands the Evergreen State College Olympia campus is situated. For thousands of years, their ancestral families lived and thrived here. They named Bud Inlet Stechas and Eld Inlet, where the campus is located here, Squaatl. Today, the Squaxin Island tribe continues to live on and steward the lands and waters of the Southern Salish Sea. We also gratefully acknowledge the Puyallup tribe, whose traditional lands Evergreen's Tacoma campus is located upon. We respect and acknowledge the Squaxin Island tribe and Puyallup tribes and other tribes across the Americas and their many contributions to the Evergreen State College in support of education, tribal sovereignty, environmental stewardship, and more. This acknowledgement is only one small step towards respect and collaboration with the aim of uplifting the voices, cultures, and histories of the tribes of these lands and waters. So today our panel is made up of 4 different speakers. It's really awesome that we have them all here together. They all work in various parts of local government focused on really implementing visions for climate change mitigation and adaptation. And they work tirelessly to really do the hard work that's required to address climate change. So I'm going to introduce each of them, and then I'm going to invite them to give a presentation. And then we're going to go into sort of as you can see the chairs here, we're going to go into a panel discussion and Q&A so that everybody has a chance to ask questions of folks here. So I'm going to start with Dr. Pamela Braff, who's the Climate Program Manager for the City of Olympia, where she leads the city's climate mitigation and adaptation efforts. Pamela's work focuses on developing internal staff capacity to address climate change and operationalizing climate action across all levels of city policy, planning, and decision-making. Before joining the city, Pamela served as a policy fellow for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and a climate extension specialist at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science. Pamela earned her PhD in marine science from the College of William and Mary and an MS in forest resources and environmental conservation from Virginia Tech. Our next presenter is Alyssa Jones Wood, who's the sustainability coordinator at the City of Tumwater. Alyssa joined the City of Tumwater in May 2022. In her role, she implements the Thurston County Climate Mitigation Plan, the Urban Forestry Management Plan, and staffs both the City Tree Board and internal-facing Green Team. She aims to improve quality of life for all current and future community members through thoughtful and community-driven sustainability work. Alyssa has a bachelor's degree in environmental studies and a master's degree in geosciences with a specialization in human environment sustainability from Florida Atlantic University. And I'm sure she'll be able to tell us some about her experience working in Florida as well. Our next presenter is Linsey Fields, who's the Climate and Sustainability Coordinator at the City of Lacey. Linsey joined the City of Lacey in 2019 as a water resource specialist in the Public Works Department and turned into this role as Climate and Sustainability Coordinator, taking on really implementing new climate programs and long-range climate planning. Before joining the City of Lacey, Linsey worked with WDFW and NOAA as a fisheries observer and field staff. And Linsey earned their master's in public administration from the Evergreen State College in 2021. Linsey was born and raised in Eastern Kentucky, where they developed a passion for environmental activism. And we can probably ask questions about that experience as well with Linsey. Linsey owns and operates a small farm in Thurston County with their spouse when not working for the city. Our last presenter, Rebecca Harvey, is a climate mitigation senior program manager for Thurston County government. Rebecca leads the Board of County Commissioners Climate Mitigation Program and collaborates with the staff in Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater on regionally coordinated implementation of the TCMP, or Thurston County Mitigation Plan. We'll hear a lot about that here in a little bit. As you might already guess, they all work really closely together. Previously, Rebecca served as Sustainability and Resilience Administrator in the city of Boynton Beach, Florida. She also helped launch a sustainability consulting group in Madison, Wisconsin, where she organized community events like an annual car-free challenge and neighborhood environmental action teams. Rebecca holds 2 master's degrees in sociology and environmental studies from UW-Madison, and has published peer-reviewed articles on environmental attitudes and behaviors, human-wildlife interactions, and restoration ecology. She's a California native and a mother of 2 young kids, working to create a climate-resilient world for current and future generations. So please help me welcome them here with a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here. I think our first presenter who will join us and share some about their work with the Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative is Alyssa. Thanks, Alyssa.
Should I speak into this thing? Hello. And does the clicker work? No. How do I advance? There's a mouse. Aha. Figured it out. Thanks. Like I said, Alyssa Jones Wood. We're going to talk about the Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative today, give you some background information, starting with the who, the why, the what, the when, and the how, and then one big project that's taking a lot of our time that might be interesting to you, which is the comprehensive plan and the climate element. So the Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative is a group of local governments, Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, and Thurston County, that work together on addressing climate mitigation for our shared greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. Olympia has fancier targets, but we still work together for the lower ones, and we're all going to be updating ours here soon with our comp plan. We work together because emissions don't stay in city boundaries. A lot of times people might work in Lacey but live in Tumwater, so having consistent rules or programs and policies are helpful. It's also more effective in terms of taxpayer money to share the load and also get a quality product instead of using 5 different consultants to work on the same project, getting different things. So we try to coordinate it so that it makes sense and is efficient because we have lots of work to do. I didn't mention at the beginning that we have some QR codes throughout. The first one that was there is also this link that's on the bottom. If listening to people talk is not the way that you process things and you'd rather scroll through a website while we're here, that is the website for the Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative. So Anthony kind of went through who we are, but wanted to give some context of the fact that we all work in local government on climate change. None of us have the same title. None of us are in the same office. It's not a uniform thing that you can expect this position to be in every single jurisdiction. So Linsey is this climate and sustainability coordinator, and they are in the community and economic development department. So that's kind of like the planning department. Pamela is in the city manager's office, and she's the director of climate programs. She's also the staff person for the collaborative that's been in her role the longest. Olympia was the first of the 4 jurisdictions to have climate staff, dedicated climate staff. Rebecca is the Climate Mitigation Senior Program Manager, and she is in the Board of County Commissioners office. So 2, kind of an executive, and then I'm the Sustainability Coordinator, a different title, and I'm in the Water Resources and Sustainability Department, which is essentially public works. And in my whole career working in local government climate work, except for 1 year where I was in the city manager's office, which was not my most fun year, I've been in public works. So you can expect to do this work if you want to do this work in all sorts of different departments with all sorts of different titles. I don't know how many of you have had title changes since you've been in your role. Yeah, it's different, so it makes it a little annoying when you're looking for jobs. None of them are the same title or whatnot, and you might have to think a lot more about underground water pipes or how to deal with elected officials. There's different details, but lots of different paths forward. So I probably don't need to get into the why very much, but just in case, why we're working on climate change is because it's a big, scary thing that we are the reason for. And here in Thurston County, we're already experiencing some of the impacts of climate change, smoke and heat, intensified storms. Didn't used to rain as heavy at once as it is now. But other things like shrinking snowpack, which impact our water resources for drinking water and also for salmon, changing and rising oceans, especially an issue for City of Olympia with sea level rise, warming lakes and streams, and then that fun algal blooms that stink and might hurt your dog, intensifying storms, like I said, deepening droughts and expanding wildfires. So there's a lot of things at risk that deserve our attention. And we're the Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative. Climate work encompasses lots of different things. Two of the most common are climate mitigation and climate adaptation. It's jargon, but I'm just going to define terms so they're all in the same place. Mitigation is the work to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, so to reduce the carbon pollution that causes the issue. And adaptation is to withstand, prepare, deal with those hazards, climate hazards like flooding, sea level rise, heat impacts, smoke impacts. So there are two different buckets, but there's a lot of overlap in between. Like water conservation helps with mitigation and adaptation. If we have more water resources, we also are using less electricity to clean those water resources, and there's more for future use. New energy systems help both local food, education, urban forestry. That's in the middle. And a lot of times, especially when we're going to talk about the comp plan, we may be forced to put things in buckets of mitigation or adaptation. But it's all encompassing. We're in one world, multiple realities depending on where you are in life, but we're working on mitigation. And now I'm going to pass it over to Rebecca to take some more slides. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Harvey. Thanks, Alyssa, for the intro. I'm going to talk, moving from the who and the why that she talked about, I'm going to talk about the what and the when. So in 2018, before any of us were here in our positions, the work actually started before that from community groups and cities and counties individually planning on their own. But starting in about 2018, the Thurston County, and the three cities worked with Thurston Regional Planning Council, TRPC, as well as a number of community and community partners, community members, stakeholders, to develop the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan, so the TCMP. And it was published in 2020 and accepted by the 4 jurisdictions. And it serves as a roadmap for ongoing collaboration among the 4 local governments to reduce our local contributions to the climate crisis. The framework that we have put in place with the new TCMC and our new interlocal agreement sets a timeline to update this plan every 6 years, beginning with a full update in 2028. So it's not a static plan. We are going to looking at the latest data, scientific findings, monitoring data, and just the policy environment that we're in, and updating the plan going forward. And then we do monitor on an annual basis with progress reports, and we do 3-year greenhouse gas inventories. And it's the mouse. Sorry, where? Sorry. Oh, this? Wait. Oh, I should have asked that at the beginning. Oh, it's hidden. Thank you, Alyssa. Okay. All right, so this is the latest, the results of the latest greenhouse gas inventory that we've done for the county-wide inventory, and it was in 2022 data. And as you see in this pie chart, buildings and energy sector is the biggest contributor to our county-wide greenhouse gas emissions at about 54%. Transportation and land use is second at about 36%. The other sectors that are listed here in those little slices of the pie look small in comparison, but that's not at all to say that they're insignificant. And there are limitations that we don't have time to get into now, but limitations to the greenhouse gas inventory method. Maybe you've learned about this in some of your classes. It really can't capture, everything that we produce and consume and emit into the atmosphere. But so that's just a little caveat to say that all of these sectors are important, and the 5 sectors that are measured in the inventory more or less align with how the plan itself is organized and what the sectors and strategies and actions are. And those are buildings and energy, transportation, land use, water and waste, agriculture, forests and prairies, and then cross-cutting sectors. And the pie does help overall, prioritization. We tend to focus a lot of our efforts on those higher impact greenhouse gas emitting sectors like buildings and energy and transportation. And you're going to hear more about that in our example work as well. So the plan set targets of reducing greenhouse gas emissions 45% by 2030 and 85% by 2080. As Alyssa mentioned, we are all in the process of our comprehensive planning, which are going to be updating these to align more with the statewide targets. Unfortunately, as you see here in the graph on the right, we're not currently on track, and that's not in any way a Thurston County unique problem. In fact, I heard just this morning there was a new UN report that just came out finding that the world is not on track, or has not reached the peak in emissions globally yet, and is still increasing. So this is, we're not alone in this, I guess, to take any comfort from the fact that, emissions are going up. You see the light blue line there is tracking, where the target needs to be. But we have time. Technologies are changing, and we're turning this big ship of, our fossil fuel based economy around little by little. And that's the work that we're all doing every day. And then one other kind of silver lining is that, Thurston County is growing a lot. Our population is growing and we're developing, and our emissions are not growing as fast as our population is growing. So our per capita emissions are decreasing, even as they're increasing overall. But this just underscores that there is still a lot of work to do. And then I'll also, I included this slide just to reinforce the point that it's about more than just the greenhouse gas emissions. It's very important to remember that all the actions that we take have bigger impacts, what we call co-benefits. So not just like what we can measure in terms of the greenhouse gas reductions, but the actions we take are helping our environment, our society, our communities just get to a better place and a better vision. And we have very holistic goals that we are addressing that align with pre-existing community goals here in Thurston County. And then we're going to move into the how. And before I turn it over to Pamela to talk more specifically about what we're doing, I think this slide might be a little hard to read, but we can share this with you all if you want afterwards. I think this slide is more important than ever now that we're seeing changes at the federal level that are not going to be, we're not going to get as much support, to say the least, from the federal government in the coming years, because this underscores that local governments have a lot of power to do this work. This is a list of the multiple levers that are available to local governments to take action. So there's so many things that we can do. And that's where the work is happening. And just to go through them real quick, on the top is regulatory changes, passing ordinances to require specific actions, for example. We also have infrastructure, capital investment. We can build the things ourselves, like bike paths or solar developments, funding and financing, advocacy, public outreach, assessment and planning, and capacity building. So we have a lot on our plates, and Pamela is now going to talk a little more specifically about the work that we're doing. Thanks.
All right. Hello, everyone. Pamela Braff. Excited to be here with you all this afternoon. So Rebecca talked a little bit about the how and these different levers. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about our implementation plan and how we work together. So I guess I'll just start by asking, anyone here get super excited about regional governance? Oh my gosh, so many hands. Like literally never do I ever get that response. So I guess I'm with my people. Thank you all. I also get very excited about regional governance. And it's really important. Alyssa talked about this a little bit about the beginning, about the importance of regional coordination in order to do this work effectively, in order to I'll also add to have a support system. When I started this job at the City of Olympia, Olympia was the only jurisdiction that had hired climate staff, and I was the lone climate staff person in our entire county, and that's a little stressful and overwhelming and a little lonely. So regional governance isn't just important for getting stuff done, but it's also important for helping us feel better as we do the work together. So I just want to point that out, and hopefully you'll see that we all really love working together through this work. So a couple of years ago, when we first completed the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan, the TCMP, we didn't have a strong regional governance structure in process. We had almost no structure in process. And it led to a lot of issues, and we weren't able to move things forward. There were all of these questions. Well, who initiates something? Does it come from a jurisdiction, or does it come from the partners, or does it come from a community member, or does it come from the Thurston Regional Planning Council, which at the time was the body, which is a kind of quasi-governmental body that was helping to facilitate the collaborative? Who's responsible for implementation? How do we implement together? How do we work together? Like all of these big questions. And it was actually causing a lot of barriers. We weren't able to move things forward. We had all of these ideas coming up, but then we kept kind of coming in these fits and spurts and weren't able to push things forward into implementation. So a couple of years ago, just after or kind of while each of the jurisdictions were getting their full-time staff on board, we started developing a formal governance structure for how we would work together. And this Venn diagram, that's the word I was looking for. This Venn diagram shows what that looks like. And so I just want to talk about this a little bit and all of the different pieces of the puzzle. So we now refer to ourselves as the Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative, or the TCMC, because in government, we love our acronyms, though I guess Evergreen loves your acronyms too. Yeah. So regional climate action, the way we see it and the way we're implementing it through our collaborative, is made up of these 4 different bodies. The jurisdictions, so the jurisdiction partners who are a member of the collaborative, so that's Thurston County and the cities of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater. There's also the staff team. So this is your region's regional staff team that's working on climate action together. We have a community advisory work group, which helps to provide important perspective. Where's Amita? Amita is a member of our community advisory work group, and as well as an executive committee. So the executive committee is made up of elected representatives from each of our jurisdiction bodies. And we really want to emphasize that each of these bodies has a different, very important role in regional climate action. And when we're talking about regional climate action, we're really emphasizing what local governments can do together, recognizing that there are more folks that play a role in climate action than just what's listed here. And so we really emphasize the jurisdictions have the primary responsibility for implementation, and just making that really clear. And jurisdictions implement work in ways that's consistent with their jurisdiction work plans and priorities and values. So it might look a little bit different in each jurisdiction. The staff team coordinates that work. We meet regularly to coordinate our jurisdiction work as well as regional initiatives that we work on together. We have our community advisory work group. They meet monthly and they provide feedback and perspective and help craft work plans and projects that we're implementing. And then the executive committee, as I said, there are champions. And what we really hope to get out of the executive committee is that we come together, we share ideas, we put things forward that we want to work on and that we're recommending as a staff team and a community advisory work group, and then they go back and champion that within their jurisdictions. So whether that means funding or staffing or making sure it gets prioritized within annual work plans, that's their role. And as I mentioned before, the jurisdictions aren't the only ones who are doing this work. Of course, we have the jurisdictions. We also have community members and we have community partners. And in the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan, there are several supporting partners who are identified that have a really, I would say, maybe outsized role over other community partners in supporting ongoing implementation. And they even have some of their own actions assigned to them in the Climate Mitigation Plan. And so these include Intercity Transit, Lot Clean Water Alliance, Puget Sound Energy, the Thurston Conservation District, and the Thurston Economic Development Council. So we also coordinate on implementation with those supporting partners as well. And now I believe, before we jump to the jurisdiction actions, I just want to share a little bit about our regional initiative. So this is very new and exciting because we've not actually had regional initiatives before. We created the plan, but then we were never able to really successfully get to implementation together, and we're there now. So we see this as a kind of very important turning point in how we work together. And so we set up this whole process. I'm not going to go into it. There was lots of steps and it was somewhat painful, but it allowed us to get to a place where we have these regional initiatives that we work on together. And so we have 2 that we're working on together across jurisdictions in 2024. One is Energize Thurston, and this is meant to be this really comprehensive outreach and incentive program about building electrification and efficiency. And it's supposed to make it easier, faster, more affordable, all of those great things for folks to install all electric heat pumps and heat pump hot water heaters, as well as some kind of enabling electrical upgrades and that type of thing. And we're planning on launching this program in 2025. And what's really exciting is that across the jurisdictions, we've secured a lot of funding to make this happen. So we have more than $2 million in funding from the Climate Commitment Act to help implement this campaign in 2025. And what this is going to look like is fully or partially subsidized installations of heat pumps and heat pump hot water heaters for low and moderate income households in Thurston County, as well as some other support for folks who are above those income limits who still want to participate in the program. So that's an example of one of those. Rebecca was talking about kind of the grants and funding as levers, as well as programmatic and outreach programs as levers. So that's an example of that. We also have an example of a policy lever that we're working on, and this is our attempt at regionally coordinated policy. And so the policy that we've been working on this year is developing a model ordinance for a home energy score disclosure. And the point of this program and this policy would really be to make home energy performance information open and available and easy to understand during the home buying process. So if someone's going to buy a home and they can go on Zillow and they see the walkability score and the transit score, and now I think you get your flood risk score and all of these things, the idea would be to add another element to that, which is you get your home energy score, which tells you how energy efficient your home is and what your energy consumption is going to be. One of the great things about the home energy score is that it uses this kind of standard process, and you also get recommendations of cost-effective energy improvements that you can do in your home at the same time. And so it's really focused on kind of an information sharing piece. And the idea for this model ordinance is that we would create a model ordinance that all of the jurisdictions could consider and hopefully adopt at the same time, which would require this disclosure at the time of listing. So we still have some more work to do on this, but it's moving forward, and it will be coming forward towards the jurisdictions early next year for their consideration. Okay, now we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to pop up and down to just talk a little bit about some of the specific actions that our jurisdictions are working on. I'm going to pass it over to Linsey first.
Hi, Linsey Fields, City of Lacey. I use they, she pronouns, but I'm just going to talk really quickly about a few of the initiatives that we've done the last year. So this is just the last year of work. We partnered with Puget Sound Energy to do matching rebates. So if you lived in the City of Lacey and city limits, and you were going through PSE to do home upgrades for insulation, windows, doors, installing a heat pump, even a new furnace, if you're getting a new, more efficient gas furnace, you could potentially get double the rebates. And so we overspent, but we spent around $230,000 last year and part of this year on that program. And so that was the first really big climate initiative program that Lacey did, and a lot of folks got to participate in that. We also got our SolSmart Silver designation. So if you're not familiar with SolSmart, it's a program funded through the federal government that local jurisdictions can apply for. You have to have specific things in place around coding, building codes, electric codes, and how to get permits for solar installation on your roof or on your property. And really what it is you have to make it fairly easy. There's different levels of designation from bronze to like platinum, and platinum is a new one. And so really all it just says, it gives us some resources that we can use, education, but also a pathway forward to make solar even easier to install in Lacey. Right now, it is pretty easy. You don't need a permit, or no, you can do an over-counter permit, which is like an instant permit. But there's hopefully plans in the future to make solar even easier, potentially not needing permits at all. And then we've been electrifying our fleet. We have about 16 new EVs. That includes EV trucks. So the Ford F-150 Lightnings, we were supposed to have more by now, but manufacturing in 2023 kind of hindered the amount we were able to purchase at that time, but we're still moving forward. And with fleet electrification, we've installed new charging stations at our shop. And so these trucks are often used by our maintenance staff, parks maintenance, public works, our transportation folks. And so the goal eventually is that we would electrify all of our equipment, especially at the maintenance center. And part of that is fleet electrification. The hindrance right now is just the capabilities to charge things like electric mowers in the field. And so we're working towards that, and they're actually getting very, very efficient these days. They're just a little costly. So once the cost comes down, we should be able to do that. So then we're in the process of installing 9 new fast chargers around the city as well. This project was on hold for about a couple of years because of contracting and then requirements by the federal government. One thing you'll learn if you work in local government for your career, if you get a grant by the federal government, there's a lot of stipulations around how you deploy those grant money. And so we had to have chargers that were like 90% made in America, which were really difficult last year to get. But we finally got them and we're installing them. And with that, Olympia.
All right. Thanks, Linsey. Okay, so I'm just going to share a couple of some of the things we've been working on in Olympia that we're particularly proud of and excited about. The first is our Energize Olympia Heat Pump Group Purchase Program, which is kind of the model that Energize Thurston is going to be following next year. So we launched Energize Olympia for the first time last year, and we're running it for a second time this year. So last year was our pilot program. We engaged more than 500 community members at workshops and outreach events throughout kind of the outreach part of that campaign, talking about benefits and challenges and opportunities for electrification. And during the pilot program, we were able to install 67 ductless electric heat pumps for folks. 22 of those were fully subsidized and the rest were self-funded. So folks coming into the program and using the benefits that we were providing. We're running the program again right now, and it's looking like by the end of our 2024 campaign, we'll reach 120 installations. So we're really excited about that and to see it scaling, and even more excited to see it scale countywide next year. And also, how cool is that street banner? Yeah. It's probably my favorite picture from the program. Some other things that we've been working on are related to parking and EV charging. These are just a couple of highlights. So the city has reduced parking requirements for new development, really new development across the city, but particularly wherever there's high frequency transit, which is, I think it's 4 times an hour, hourly. I think that's how it's defined in the code. And so that just helps with It's a slam dunk for affordable housing, walkability, and reduced dependency on vehicles. So we're really excited about that. We also have a new policy in place that has to do with EV charging. So when you do provide parking, even if it's not required, you still have the option to do it. When you do provide parking, you are required to provide a certain amount of EV charging capability. So there's some state standards in place for that. Olympia has adopted some additional requirements that go beyond those state standards that require a minimum amount of EV chargers installed and EV-ready parking installed. So one of the things that's really exciting about EV-ready parking is it doesn't require any of the infrastructure to be installed at the time of construction. All it does is ask you to put the conduit in the ground. So that way, when you need to install EV charging later, you'll be able to do that without digging things up, without creating a lot of additional costs. So the cost at that time of construction is really marginal, but it can be really cost prohibitive later. So it's really just focused on future-proofing for as those things continue to develop. And so for multifamily development, it basically now requires 100% EV, either EV charging or EV ready. So assuming every parking spot that we're building today is going to need to support an electric vehicle at some point within its lifetime. And then the last one, this is a really fun one. And any of you know Lana Jarvis, previous Evergreen alum? Yeah, Lana was an intern with the climate program, and she helped us to develop this really cool climate media project in partnership with the Timberland Regional Library, where we pulled together a list of recommended climate films and climate reads and hosted some events with the library. There's something there for anyone if you are new to climate, deep into climate, a kid, an adult looking for fiction, nonfiction, kind of anything. We've got some great blog posts on the city's blog if you want to see our even more curated list of recommendations. Great place to start if you're looking for some winter movies or summer reading. Highly recommend checking it out. And that's all we have for Olympia. Pass it over to Alyssa.
All right, that's my car on top of a parking pad on our off-grid solar-powered EV charger that we deployed in October at Pioneer Park. It moves every 120 seconds to track the sun like a little sunflower, and it's doing okay. We installed 3 level 2 EV charging stations at City Hall for the public to use, and all of our public EV charging is provided for free at no cost, at least until 2027, when we'll try to figure out if we can keep affording to do that. But so far, it's been cheap for the city. The Pioneer Park Charger is my second bullet. We completed an EV fleet assessment, so we wanted to look at our future needs for buying different vehicles for different purposes, and when they were going to be retired, and if they could be replaced with electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, whatever. We created that plan where we should be able to reduce our gasoline consumption 70% by 2030. There are some vehicles that we can't afford unless we get grant funding, which used to be available through the federal government. Fingers crossed, maybe it still will be, which would allow us to go above and beyond. And that 70% includes police vehicles. That'll be a hard sell, but we showed that we can do it and that there are vehicles that they can use. We added 10 new EVs to the city fleet. We have more than 10. That was just trucks. I think we have close to 7% of our fleet is fully EV right now. And we have a requirement that unless there isn't an EV model available, you have to replace an old vehicle with an EV. We completed an inventory of trees on city properties and developed a maintenance plan to identified potential planting areas. So half of my job is the urban forestry management plan. If anyone in here is an arborist, starting in the new year, we'll have a new position open for someone who's actually skilled in urban forestry to do that role for the city. So keep an eye out for that if that's your place of expertise. But we have almost more than $1 million of deferred maintenance of our trees. So we identified where they were, priority order, what the issues were, so that we could then approach that either through the workers that we have or if we need to contract out to do that maintenance. Y'all might have heard about one particular tree in Tumwater that's particularly controversial from not being maintained. So we're trying to not have that happen anymore. We also identified those potential planting areas because we have intentions to plant more trees, especially in riparian areas, but also in areas where it might help alleviate heat concerns. We have a large heat island in the city that's called the airport, and trying to make that better for our community. And then we also went through SoulSmart and got our silver designation. It wasn't on Pamela's slide, but I just want to call out that all 4 of our jurisdictions have SoulSmart. Olympia got it first, and they are gold, which is fancier.
All right, last but not least, and you guys are hearing some overlap, I think, some common themes. A lot of us are working on electric vehicles, fleet electrification, as well as solar-related projects. So the county, likewise, similar themes. It's a little different in the county. I was honestly a little surprised when I showed up that publicly available electric vehicle charging stations had not been approved. We do have a couple, but I think it was like hitting a restart because they weren't going so well during COVID. They stopped being used. They're at the courthouse on Lake Ridge Drive. So the board, the one thing that's different in the county is the Board of County Commissioners are full-time employees, and they're in the office and they're in meetings and work sessions 3 solid days of the week. I came from a city before, so that was a really different environment for me. Working very close, it's cool to work very closely with the elected officials like that, but also everyone's like really in meetings all the time, so it can be a little slower to get things moving. And the policy needed to go through like an approval process to allow for public EV charging. The board really likes to be engaged and like make decisions on all of the activities, which is good government, but also like makes it a little slower too. So we did get that policy passed in November of last year. So now we like all on the same page, and we have the official go ahead to get grants to install public facing EV chargers. And we have received 2 grants. One is for public chargers, and one is for county fleet chargers. And so just getting those going, the public chargers are going in at in Tenino at the new Southwest Washington Agricultural Business and Innovation Park, or the Ag Park. It's a new hub for rural innovation and business down there. And we're also installing up to 24 new chargers for our fleet vehicles. We received SoulSmart Silver designation. And we're planning, this is very exciting to me, we're planning to install large-scale solar installation on our landfill. Fingers crossed, we're just doing like the studies and getting a lease in place where the county would be leasing that land to a solar developer, and they are establishing a power purchase agreement to sell that power to PSE, Puget Sound Energy, to go straight into the grid. So working on kind of getting that through all the steps. Hopefully you'll see more about that next year. And we're doing a lot of feasibility studies, hence the picture here of consultants checking our buildings. And we've done 6 studies on county buildings for solar and battery storage. And we're doing 10 more for solar and community solar, like larger scale community solar projects throughout the county. And then last but not least, our forest conversion codes were updated and adopted in May. The forest conversion codes is a type of forest permit that the county manages. Most forestry in this state is managed at the state level by the DNR. Timber harvests and rotations, the county doesn't have much authority over that except for an advocacy role, which we've been trying to play and not always winning. But things are changing at the state level that might help that. But the conversion code is when a developer wants to change it from forestry practices to another use, like a developer. And we've tightened up our codes a lot and require tree assessment and planting of new trees. And there was really no requirements for that prior to this. So if you're interested in that, I didn't put the website here, but it's thurstonforests.org. You can learn more about our forest codes. And I'm turning it back over to Linsey to talk more about the comprehensive plan. Thank you.
I'm going to go through this, but I'll also try to make it quick so you can ask all your questions. The Growth Management Act is what all of our governments are mandated by and use in order to manage the growth of our counties and our cities and our urban growth areas. And so we could have lots of discussions around if the Growth Management Act actually does what it's supposed to do. But as of now, this is what we use to manage our growth. And so it establishes different goals and uses different plans to create those goals across different areas, up to 15 different areas. And so right now, the reason we're talking about it is right now all of our jurisdictions are in the process of updating our comprehensive plans. And the way I like to explain a comprehensive plan is it really is just this big document which the city uses then to make decisions for the next 10 years about projects, about plans, about programs, especially our public works departments. If there's not a goal in our comprehensive plan, then it's harder to get a project on our budgets. And so our councils really like to point to the comprehensive, well, at least my council likes to point to the comprehensive plan goal, outline it in staff memos. How are we going to meet this goal that we said we would meet in our comprehensive plan? And so the elements function as chapters, essentially. Typically, these are very segmented and don't relate, even though they do relate to each other. Lacey's this year is going to use a new method where on our website, you can go to a goal and then it'll show you all of the elements of the plan that it touches or reaches. And so we're really excited about that. But each of these elements, there's elements like land use, transportation. There's an environmental element, but that's probably going to change to the climate element. And then there's like economic development elements, all kinds of different elements that you can think of. But the thing I want to say about comp plan is it can often be frustrating because these are these really broad reaching goals and they're not very prescriptive. And that's, again, for a purpose. And so we can fit a lot of projects into a goal. Often with local governments, especially big plans that talk about how a city is going to grow, you don't want them to be very prescriptive because then you're kind of shoehorned into a specific way you have to do something, right? Or you have to do a specific project the right way. Things change over 10 years. Just technology in general is going to vastly be different in 10 years than where we're at now, even for climate change. And so we want to be able to grow with the technology and grow with the changes as well. And then, so HB 1181 is a new state law that was passed last year, which means that all of the jurisdictions in Washington state that are managed by the Growth Management Act, I feel like Clark County is the only one that isn't. I think there's like one or two or smaller cities that aren't governed by the Growth Management Act. Anyways, this establishes that all jurisdictions now have to have a climate element in their comprehensive plan, and the climate element has to have 2 different sub-elements, a climate resiliency sub-element and a greenhouse gas reductions element. So really just what we talked about earlier, it's that adaptation and that mitigation, those 2 different elements. And so the resiliency sub-element is really talking about climate hazards and how a city, county is going to plan for climate hazards. And the mitigation one is how we're going to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in our and reduce those. And so right now we're doing a lot of outreach. We'll be doing outreach next year. This is your chance to tell us how the cities that you live, work, and play in want to grow sustainably, not sustainably, what transportation projects you're excited about, land use policies, things like that. Oh, oopsie. My bad. You know what? Let's see if I turn it on. Yeah, I can't go back on the mouse though. Let's try this. Ooh, I'll do this. It's very slow. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it like this. Actually, no, I'm not, because there's comments on the side. Those comments are fine. Okay. You'll get a copy of this. There's lots of surveys, right? So Maptionaire is the one City of Lacey is using. Olympia has one right now. These are all ways you can participate right now in the comp plan. If you have questions about the Tumwater comp plan, you can email this little comp plan email right here. And then Thurston County's webpage for their comp plan. We have one as well at Lacey. I think it's launching this week, so that'll come out. And with that, I'm going to end our presentation because I think we're over time anyways. And yeah.
All right, so we're going to move into sort of panel. I prepared a couple questions and asked our panelists to respond to them. So we're going to move into that, but I also want to give folks time to have questions for them as well. So if you have questions, please write them down, and you can ask them here in a little bit. But I just wanted to get us started by having our panelists share a little bit about their journey into climate work. So I was wondering if each of you might be willing to share a little bit about how you got into the position you're in, how you got motivated to work on climate change, and tell us a little bit about your journey. Who wants to start?
I'll start because my journey started first.
Okay.
Oldest first. So I've been doing this work a little longer than my colleagues. Everyone's superstar here and has done more than I have in a long time, but I'm just making myself feel better because I'm older than everyone. But when I was in school, I studied sociology because I was always really fascinated by how people think and how society works and how society is messed up in some ways and like why we make the decisions we do. But I was also like an environmentalist. I did a lot of outdoor stuff, backpacking in the Sierras growing up and stuff, and just what kind of put those things together. So I was always like coming to environmental work from a social background, and worked in a variety of jobs. I won't bore you with all of them, but then was in an academic setting actually. And I love writing. I love doing academic work. But when the 2016 election happened, I felt really compelled to get more activist oriented and really do something about climate change. And I started volunteering with a group called Citizens Climate Lobby, where you talk directly to your elected officials. I wrote a lot of letters to the editor, op-eds, things like that. I got trained as a climate reality leader with Al Gore, and just got really motivated to communicate climate change and do like practical work. Applied for a job in a city government. And it had always been in the back of my head doing consulting and academic work, like maybe one day I'll work for a city, and didn't know much about it, didn't have a background in government or public administration, but I had the complex skill set that worked and got me the job. And I basically figured out what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I love the work. And I will turn it over to who wants to go next. Listen.
Hello. My mom was an activist growing up, and my dad was a science teacher, so we did a lot of activities around the environment. Every Earth Day, every beach cleanup, that was my family planning it. We would go plant trees on the weekends for fun. So I was kind of raised to care about this. When my mom would go to city council often, so I got to know my local elected officials from when I was like 5. I was always there with my mom, talking to them, going to the planning office. I worked as AmeriCorps Vista after my undergrad degree and started a community garden at a day labor center for undocumented Guatemalan Mayan immigrants, and started that community garden and got to work with the planning department at City of Jupiter, and just was like, oh, I want to work in local government and I care about the environment. Maybe I can do these both at the same time. Went to grad school, landed a job in a regional planning council, and then a local government, and it's been there ever since. So I had the blessing of being familiar with local government from a very early age, and it being normalized and something that was interesting to me, and to be able to get in there.
Well, I was convinced I was going to play in the WNBA, so I did not think about local government as an option for a career. I came to Washington to attend the Evergreen State College in my undergrad for a few other reasons as well, but it just really aligned to go to Evergreen, and that's when I really started connecting dots between environmental activism and climate change and all these other environmental education. I was an environmental educator before I came to the city. And so it really helped me connect these dots growing up of communities left behind by clean energy and why they're so resistant to change is because they're losing jobs, their pollution's still there, it's not getting cleaned up. And so, yeah, so it was a really great experience. Obviously, I have a lot of love for Evergreen because it really shaped, I think, my last 10 years of my life. And then, yeah, I was convinced I was going to work in the field the rest of my life because I really loved fisheries collection and fisheries data and fisheries management. And so the last fisheries management job I had, I worked out of the Bering Sea in Alaska collecting fisheries data, and it was really hard. And then just life changed, and I needed to be around Thurston County more often and not be gone for 3 or 4 months at a time. Got a job with Mason County Public Health as an environmental health specialist, doing water collection data and septic systems, and trying to figure out why water quality wasn't up to standards for Department of Health and things like that, and investigation. And then a job with the City of Lacey came open, and so I just like to say that I fell into public policy, climate change, local government. And then I got when I started working for Lacey, I started thinking really honestly about my future and my career, and got my graduate degree from the Evergreen State College again. And then COVID hit and got to do all that online, which was super fun. But and then the climate and sustainability coordinator position was created at the City of Lacey, and it just aligned with everything that I wanted to do, and aligned with the past and how I had grown. And yeah, so I've been in this position for about a year, and it's been really great. Yeah.
So I hope maybe you'll take away that we all have very different paths into this. Yeah. I like to tell people that I'm a failed academic. I spent the majority of my adolescence and early adult life thinking that I was going to be a professor. Love teaching, love research, developing new knowledge, understanding, all of that type of thing. But I've always been on the very applied side of research. That was the type of work that I was doing. I was always really interested in doing research to inform decision-making and kind of really working at that science-policy interface. And when I was working on my graduate degree, I got involved in working on a little side project with some local governments to help them integrate climate hazards into their long-range planning through their comprehensive planning process. And this was in Virginia, so we couldn't call it climate change. But they were still doing the work, and they were doing the planning, and they wanted to understand how they should incorporate future climate hazards. This was in Chesapeake Bay region. They were experiencing really extreme, we would call it sunny day flooding or recurrent flooding, like tidal flooding on daily bases, like trying to figure out how they were going to plan for that. So I was working with them on that. And I started spending so much time working on that project that my advisor started calling my dissertation my side project, and this project my primary work. And so I kind of started to realize, maybe I need to change gears here. I really like working with local governments. And so I kind of started dipping my toes in the water with that. My first job out of graduate school was as an extension specialist. So doing that, helping to implement research findings and best practices and working directly with local governments and practitioners and nonprofits and property owners in Virginia. But I kind of was like, always thought I had to work in federal policy in order to do policy work. Like I didn't really have this realization, which is a little bit silly because my husband works in local government. He's a planner and he does local government policy. So I don't know, something wasn't clicking for me there. So I spent some time working in the federal government. I was a policy fellow in the National Ocean Service, and we were working a lot on community climate resilience and coastal resilience. And the phrase that we would say all the time and that I would hear and then I would find myself saying is all resilience is local. Anything that we do at the federal level still needs to be implemented at the local level. And that really struck me. And so as I was wrapping that up, I started my search for a more permanent job. And I found this job within the city of Olympia, and it looked really exciting and the opportunity to build something new that hadn't happened before. And so I kind of found my way kind of back into local policy through that.
Thank you all so much. It's really interesting to hear about like the connections probably between your experiences and different places, thinking about climate work, Florida, Virginia, maybe Kentucky. I don't know if you're thinking about it so much then, but maybe more about basketball, sounds like. I just wanted to kind of ask one more question, then we'll turn it over to the audience. It's kind of a huge question. I think it's, each of you can kind of take any approach you want to it, but kind of like what are the major challenges and opportunities for climate policy and action in this region, in Thurston County, and maybe with some of the changes that we're experiencing from the recent elections, how that might be influencing some of your work.
Yeah, funding is the number one. I also never miss an opportunity to share that our regional greenhouse gas reduction goals were adopted because the federal government was failing to do their job to do that, and that we are local governments trying to accomplish a nation-state scale goal. So with local government resources, so having adequate amount of money to do projects, to do implementation, to bring people to the table to do the necessary policy work, we're doing our best. You may have noticed from the Tumwater jurisdiction-led stuff, most of my stuff is EV. That's because that's what funding I could get. So it's a struggle to get funding and to know what's coming in terms of funding, to be able to be really strategic about putting together a plan for implementation. We get asked a lot for a plan, like a time-based plan for implementation. And if we don't know what funding opportunities are available, we cannot do that. So we're having to be reactive because of the lack of funding. I'm really stoked that Climate Commitment Act got upheld because that's been a lot of funding for me. I only have one federal grant, but funding is a major obstacle. And would love to teach students how to write grants and would like to do grants with Evergreen so that we can share the load a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll build on that with just going back to how I said I got into this working in local government because of the lack of support at the federal level with the last time we were in the situation we find ourselves in again now, which I'm actually really kind of depressed about and not really ready to jump in and have a solution to. But I do know that we were there before, and just on a personal level, that's what impelled me to go like, okay, I can really make a difference in local government for all the reasons you're hearing from my colleagues here and everything we shared. There's so much we can do. But I like the way Alyssa put it, that, yeah, it's an outsized problem. And, you see the trajectory of our emissions, and there's so much that we can't control at the same time. But, in 2017, when I got my first city job in Florida, also, Alyssa and I knew each other down there, there were a lot of the cities and counties hiring the same positions, and there was really like a momentum growing for this work in local governments. And there was a national movement called We Are Still In, where cities, counties, universities, private sector, businesses were all signing pledges to stay in the fight. It was right when Trump pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord in response to that. So, that gives me optimism that like we can do that again, because the momentum is there and we know what we have to do. And but I think you asked about challenges, and I'll just add to like the funding issue is also just really capacity. Like we're most of us are one person shows at our jurisdictions. So we're working to embed the work across the different departments, and particularly at the county, you might have come across the term silos in your studies, that like the county is bigger and more unwieldy, and the different departments really operate decentralized as like their own agencies. So the silos are very real, and it just can be challenging to bridge those gaps and work across. And but we're getting there. And I would love to have more staff working for me too, because there's just a lot of work to do. Who wants to go next?
The challenge. Weirdly enough, I don't know how much the challenge has changed if I really think about it. I don't want to say that federal policy doesn't matter, because it does. But in some ways, a lot of the hardest things we need to do, I think, are the same as they were pre and post election. They're maybe a little bit harder now, but they're still the same. And the reality is that addressing climate change is not easy, and it requires significant changes in how we live and operate in this world, and economy-wide changes, and that's really hard. When we talk about our two biggest sectors, buildings and energy and transportation, and how we're going to reduce emissions from those, it means redesigning how we live in our communities. For years and years and years, for decades and decades, we built to support the automobile. You can't undo that overnight. It's going to take decades and decades and decades of work, and it requires us to be a little uncomfortable at times along the way. And so I just think it's important that we acknowledge that it has been and always will be hard to make those changes. And a lot of times you need to be uncomfortable first before you see the benefits. And it takes the times for those things to accrue. The opportunity, though, is that I think our community is almost ready. We're not quite there yet. That's just the reality. But we're getting there, and I'm seeing growing support and understanding and the importance of kind of doing these hard things to get us there. And the thing that I like to think about is that a climate resilient community is a more thriving community, and it brings so many other co-benefits along with it. And that's a future that I'm really excited for, even if it takes some time to get there.
Okay, now we can open it up to the audience. You can just raise your hand and share. These mics here will pick it up, so there's no need for us to bring one through. Starting in the middle.
So there's a lot of mention of like more walkability and like bike-friendly initiatives and stuff, as well as electrifying several fleets. I was wondering if there is much in the way of initiatives for, I know like Seattle to Tacoma is like they're expanding the light rail that far. Is there any initiatives to increase that kind of public transportation or add trains, like regional trains for like a light rail system between Tacoma and Olympia? Is that anything that's like as far as like balanced energy and transportation stuff?
So this is when comprehensive plans come up again. So in order to get light rail to Thurston County, we would first have to now preserve the light rail space. And really what that means is we'd have to plan for light rail, and we still probably wouldn't get it until like 2050. Tacoma doesn't even have light rail yet. But the problem is if we don't plan for like the routes, like how we would and start buying property to preserve that and putting code in place now, then it makes it much more challenging in the next 10 years to do that. Other than that, Intercity Transit updated their master plan, and they're looking at new models to reroute their buses. So moving away from the sort of what is it now? And looking more at like a spine model, so it'd be like more efficient transit. That's kind of what we're thinking of. Light rail is quite a few decades away from coming to Thurston County, from at least connecting us to the north. But that planning has to happen now. And like one of the things with long range planning is if we're not securing those railways right now for the future for building out, then we'd have to buy property in the future at future rates and change, code things like that. So, sorry, I just talked about this with my director. Yeah.
Is that something that's actively being done then, or is there not much focus on that?
No, we're not actively doing that. And this would be a chance for you to put that into our comprehensive plans now, if that's something you'd like to see. So if we get enough folks in our community that say they really, really want light rail to come here in the next however many years, then we need to hear about that now so we can start planning for it now. Yes.
This is just my obligatory. You need significant density in order to support light rail. It's really, right? Like, it's really important. You need significant density to support any type of high frequency transit. Yeah, whether or not it's buses or light rail. And so I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. But if you want to plan for light rail, then you also have to plan for the amount of density that can then support it as well. And so those two things go hand in hand.
Electrification, and I was wondering if 2066 is going to have any immediate impact on that.
Yeah.
Yes. I've been in calls recently with other Washington local government climate staff, and everybody is pretty scared of those impacts because there's language that specifically says that we can't discourage, cities and counties can't discourage natural gas, and some local government attorneys are interpreting that as we can't incentivize electrification. And some cities are considering shuttering their programs to address the largest sector of our emissions because that slipped and everybody else looked at the other initiatives and not that particular sentence in that. So I know my city attorney is looking at the impacts of 2066 for our upcoming Energize Thurston program, and I am hopeful. And that also a lot of jurisdictions in Washington state are seeking guidance from the new governor as to how they want to do this. And something really fun, the Department of Commerce, the program that is funding our Energize Thurston program in large part, didn't think about it. And they got asked a question from another climate practitioner recently, hadn't thought about that, if we can do this or not. So it's all emerging right now and we're trying to figure it out, but it's fishy, not super clear. I feel confident that we're all going to push for everything that we legally can do on building electrification. But we have fun obstacles to overcome beyond just the federal government right now. Yep.
Also, there's potentially a legal challenge to 2066. So as of now, yes, it's passed. I think, who was I talking about? First we have to certify the election, right? So December 5th is the first sort of time frame for 2066. Once it gets certified, then there can be legal challenges to it. So they might, who knows how long that'll take to work through, probably most of next year. I honestly don't anticipate it affecting our funding we have now and for the Energize Thurston campaign for next year. Fingers crossed. I think we'll get it going fast enough that it potentially won't, but it might affect future years' ability to extend the program. Legal challenges is hopefully the path forward for that one.
So first, I want to thank the organizers and the panelists for doing this in the last week. I think it's really necessary to have this reminder that local government, local community is strong and we can do a lot, even in the face of big challenges. So thank you so much for putting this together. I know you're a small team. I'm curious if you have further linkages outside our immediate South Sound with the tribes, with other jurisdictions in the area.
Yes. Yeah. So all of our local governments have relationships with Nisqually and Squaxin tribes across different, at the highest level at our council level to our city managers. They all are working with the tribes on multiple projects. I don't think that, so on our immediate team, So the Nisqually tribe is a sovereign nation, right? They have their own plan coming up. They're doing their own mitigation plan right now, and for their community. And so hopefully there'll be partnerships in the future with the staff team level that we'll be able to work on. And then you saw our partner jurisdictions in the plan. So Intercity Transit, Economic Development Council, Thurston Conservation District. Anytime things come up that we need to cross collaborate with, we are. I think we all have pretty good working relationships across the different partnerships, just with like on the staff level. Yeah, and Candace, and we have a dedicated position on the community advisory work group for an Indigenous community member, and that's filled right now. And so, yeah, any other things? Sure.
Yeah, Thurston County as well. We have just everything Linsey said, like every level of partnership with Chehalis, Nisqually, and Squaxin Island tribes. An example is with our comprehensive planning that you heard about. The tribal contacts partners have been involved in every step of the planning since the beginning as like the first tier of stakeholder outreach, even before it goes to the public and the planning commission. So it's very, very close consultation with the tribes on the development of the plan. And we have the community advisory work group member. We try to make sure we have at least one tribal representative on our CAW, Community Advisory Work Group. And then you also asked about other local governments. We have an example of the first phase of the Energize Thurston campaign is called the Switch Is On, and it switches on, switcheson.wa? Wa.switcheson. There's two. It's wa.switcheson.org. Something like that. Yeah, you'll find it. Anyways, it was a unique partnership just as we were starting to build out our very local county-based energy efficiency and electrification campaign. We had the opportunity to partner with Tacoma, Pierce County, Seattle, and King County on contributing to this pilot program that's now serving the 3 counties and hopefully will be serving the full state. So it's an exciting opportunity for all of us, and being Thurston and with Olympia as the capital seat was a great opportunity to educate our legislators and have the presence here for that too. And I know that other members here are involved in more collaborations.
My department, so I'm in essentially the Public Works Department. We have a quarterly standing meeting with natural resources staff from the Squaxin Island tribe. We meet in person for a couple hours and go over all of our updates, their updates, how we can collaborate. We work really closely, especially on stream restoration and riparian restoration, very, very closely. And then in terms of outside of our Thurston County, I'm City of Tumwater and City of Olympia are members of the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, and that's a large network of North American local government sustainability practitioners. It's a peer sharing network. They have a smaller Cascadia network that's within the Cascadia bioregion, including British Columbia, that also meets, and then a smaller Washington group, and then we're all in other groups of building decarbonization in Washington. So we're talking to our peers throughout the continent and in Washington pretty regularly because we want to have efficiency of work. We're all working on the same things. We have the same levers to pull. If we can copy, that makes less work. Plagiarism is not a thing in local government. It's actually, well, it's a very good thing. It's a good thing. So yeah. Did you want to say anything? No.
Yeah, I'm interested in Evergreen's interface with the county, so it's mainly with you, Ms. Harvey. We have an official representative here at Evergreen. His name is William Ward. He's an adjunct administrator for the Thurston Regional Planning Council. That means he's pretty much the interface of climate action, homelessness, transportation, zoning, and everything, as directed by the Evergreen administration. In your knowledge, has he ever spoken with you about anything?
I'm not familiar with him. Tell me the name again.
William Ward. He's our facilities director.
He serves a role on the TRPC, Thurston Regional Plan. So Thurston County, I mean, you maybe know this, but different agencies. TRPC is quasi-governmental? I guess it's a quasi-governmental. It's not a county government. It doesn't serve the same role as the county government. They're more They do their own planning that serves all of our jurisdictions, and they convene different committees and work groups. But I just want to be clear that it's not, I don't work for TRPC. So, yeah.
But saying that if he was kind of committed to the rules of the college, I would feel that he would interject with you in some form or fashion.
Alyssa's met him.
I haven't met him yet. I would love to meet him. If you could connect us, I'd be very glad. It's very likely, like I said earlier, I haven't been with the county that long, and there are silos. There is climate work and housing work definitely is going on in our Public Health and Social Services Agency, which really operates as its own agency, our Community Planning and Economic Development, which also very much operates independently. So it's very likely that he does have contacts there, but I just personally haven't interfaced with him yet.
When I did meet him, it was at a CCAS event here on campus.
Could you talk a little bit about battery storage or energy storage facilities, knowing that that is erupted in Skagit County and other places across the state?
Are you large scale or micro?
Maybe both.
I mean, a little bit. I know, like I presented that we have done feasibility studies to look at the potential and the costs and the kind of scenarios for doing solar and battery storage on 6 of our facilities. We applied for one of the state grants to move forward with one of them. We did not receive that. We received another planning grant to do more solar studies on other facilities. I was a little disappointed in that because I thought we had a really good case. It was our Public Health and Social Services building, which had like a resiliency focus. So that's where that at the state level kind of in their silos, although Commerce is trying to not be so siloed with these grant programs, but it has been really with a focus on resiliency. So to access those programs as local governments, you had to make a very strong case for resiliency. Did you get one of those? So Pamela can maybe talk a little bit more about that. I just know that like the costs are still very, very high, and it's great that there is a pot of state funding and is going to continue. I don't know if that's Climate Commitment Act or something else. It is also, so that's great to focus on that. But I haven't had direct experience with it yet.
So I'm really excited about battery storage, like all types of battery storage. For folks who may be less familiar, it serves a lot of really important purposes. It serves folks often immediately go to the resilience benefits of it in the event of a power outage and being able to maintain critical services, and that's all really important. And it's an important piece of batteries. But there's another piece of battery storage that maybe doesn't get talked about as much. That's also really important for decarbonization and renewable energy production. So as we kind of move forward into fully renewable electricity production, we're going to be moving forward into this future where we see more peaks and valleys in energy production. It's as it's available and not on demand, which presents some challenges, but there are ways to overcome those. And one of those ways is through battery energy storage, which helps to kind of mitigate those peaks, those highs and lows. And it has the added benefit of meaning that if PSE deploys a lot of battery energy storage, either large scale or micro, it also means they don't have to turn on their peaking plants as much. And those peaking plants is when they're trying to fill these big gaps in energy consumption. And they're the most energy intensive and emissions intensive version of electricity production. So battery storage is one of those things that kind of fits within that Venn diagram cross section between mitigation and adaptation. So we're thinking about battery storage in a lot of different ways at Olympia right now. There's a lot of potential coming forward in the future as folks get their electric vehicles and increasingly having battery to bidirectional charging, right? Where you can literally use your vehicle as a battery for your house. So that's really a really potentially cool application for single family is mostly where that would probably have the best application. We're looking at it for some city facilities as well. And recently we did just get a grant to do a solar plus battery storage system at the Armory. If folks are familiar with the Armory, it's a new building it's an old building that the city of Olympia recently acquired. It's close to downtown Olympia, the East Side neighborhood, and it's going to be this kind of community arts hub. And we're talking about using it also as like an arts and resiliency space, which is really exciting, kind of bringing all of that kind of community development and climate action and resilience all together. So we'll be looking towards kind of building that out over the next several months.
We've been meeting with PSC because our code currently doesn't allow them to put in battery storage unless it is attached directly to renewable energy generation, which they're not intending to do that in Tumwater limits. They just want to have battery storage to help with the grid. So part of our comp plan development code updates will be fixing that language to make it allowable.
Hi, thanks so much for being here, and I really appreciated each of you sharing your backstory of how you came to the work that you're doing today. And I was just wondering, for each of you personally, what might be your most favorite or most meaningful climate change practice or strategy?
I was just thinking about this and connecting it back to the challenge that you asked earlier. Climate work in Washington and really in like, what we call the West is really imperfect. And so there's often these like moral conundrums that I have over EV charging because where the minerals are coming from and the labor practices I have to go into making it and the carbon footprint of buying a battery and an EV and, kind of leaving the global South behind while the West, electrifies. And so that's like one of the hardest parts for me, but I feel like I get through it by, it has nothing to do, has really nothing to do with the work I do at the City of Lacey. Don't get me wrong. I do a lot of meaningful work there, but I don't think my job stops when I go home for the day. I do a lot of like small scale farming and community garden building and building community. And so I think I get over those, not really get over I get past the moral conundrums by having those conversations with folks in my job and then outside as well. Like, here are the benefits of EV, but also let's think about this. And so it's not just like single-minded, like it's just us moving forward, but we're trying to bring the entire world on board with us as we do this. And then, for me, gardening and being outside is really important. My background's in environmental education, and I had never really planned to be in an office full time, but things sort of happen as they happen. And I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I really love my job, and I'm really excited to be here. And just like, working. And I think just today I had a really awesome moment of like gratitude of just like sitting here with the staff and just being like, wow, like we're very small, but we've gotten a lot done in the last year. And it feels really good to like sit here with these like three amazing, women and just be like, wow, this is really cool. Yeah.
I'm really not good at answering questions like this because I feel like I don't stop to think about. A council member asked me once, like, what's your favorite thing about doing this job? And I'm always just like, oh, I didn't stop to think about it. I just go and I have no idea. And if I stop to think, I might get sad. Yeah. So I appreciate the question, but I'm not going to get sad. I just keep going. Maybe that's my favorite part.
She does. She does. I'll attest to that. It's a tough question. And I think I used to have a better answer for it. Before I had kids, and my life is more complicated with kids. Like, I biked everywhere, and I would definitely say in a heartbeat, just like human-powered transportation was like so empowering. It's so good for every aspect of myself and the planet and all those connections. I'm not able to do that anymore. I drive my electric car. So I think now, and I think you asked on a personal level. So I put solar on my house after not, moving into a house here. I was finally in a place where I could afford it, thankfully, and had a house that was a roof that was conducive to it. So just the feeling of generating my own clean energy, clean electricity, plugging my EV into it and not having any emissions as I drive down the road at, 50 years old, I'll just say, I've lived a long time with driving and polluting, and just like that was always just the go-to, the life that I had to leave. So now to be able to not emit in my daily life is amazing.
And Linsey bikes pretty much everywhere.
Except in the winter.
Yeah. I also just want to share, I also had a moment of gratitude listening to you all present. So I do feel really lucky to be able to work with this amazing group. It's something special. Most jurisdictions don't have this type of regional collaboration. Or if they do, they don't collaborate in the same way. They get together like once a month and share some updates. They don't actively collaborate together in the way that we do. So I feel really lucky to have that. I would say like on a technical level, the most important thing we do, land use planning. Land use planning, that's it. Has always and will always be the responsibility of local government, and we've made some mistakes, and we can and need to correct them. On a more kind of personal level, living close to where I work. I feel very lucky to be able to do that, and it also means I very rarely drive a car, and I hate when I am forced to do it, and I get really cranky about it. So that's another thing, and also just add something that I've been working on more, which is also really important, and we maybe don't talk about as much, as stepping away from the work. Taking some time away is really, really important. It's hard, it's emotional, it's mission-driven work. It can take a lot out of you, so taking that time as well.
Thank you all for being here, awesome. Thank you all for your participation and questions. Really appreciate it. That's it for today. Michael, we can maybe ask your question.
Oh, I was going to. Well, I do have a question. I can save that for later. I was going to say announcement is that if you're on campus at 4:00 in seminar 2, E as an Echo, we're going to be having Climate Cafe, where if you want to continue chatting, or even just come by and steal free coffee and tea, you're more than welcome to. There's no shame if you just want tea and such. Yeah, and I guess I was going to ask about best way for folks to continue engaging with things. We wanted to give like a quick thing. I know there's a comprehensive plan. Should we show up to events, things for college students on a regular?
Yeah, I don't know which slide you're putting up, but the QR code on the very first slide, or just thurstonclimatecollaborative.org, will get you to our website. And at the bottom, there's sign up for our newsletter. And we don't send a very regular newsletter, but anytime there is an update, we will let you know, and you can get involved that way. And then also on the city and county page of that same site, there's city county initiatives. You can find out how to engage with each local government, showing up to the board meetings if you want to engage on a specific topic.
And we're all genuinely asking for engagement in our comprehensive plans right now. We love hearing from people all the time about climate change, but now is a time where we really need you to concentrate that right now, so that because other people in our cities are listening. It's going to be an official document. They're probably not going to wade through 70 pages to take something out, so it's a good time to get to squeeze things in, and to actively take advantage of more than just us listening right now.
Please show up to Lacey and talk about bikes.
Yeah.
Yes, Stillwater too. They don't think people want to bike in Stillwater.
They're very car-centric still, so it's really difficult to get around that.
And people don't want to bike because we don't have bike lanes, but we don't have bike lanes because people think that people don't want to bike.
Government conundrum.